put the pre-submitted questions to him. And the first one is from Amal de Chichera of the Equal Rights Trust. Stateless people around the world require the protection of their home countries and of the international community in order to live secure and dignified lives. The escalating conflict between Rohingya and Rakhine in North Rakhine State is a sad reminder of the extent to which stateless persons are vulnerable to human rights abuse. What steps could be taken to integrate the Rohingya and other stateless persons into Burmese society to prevent conflicts of this kind recurring in the future and to ensure they have a role to play in the country's journey towards democracy? And a question from Peter Bamford. I'm not going to read it all because it's rather long, but basically he says that when he spoke to the military, one of the main justifications for military rule was that without strong military rule of the country, it would break up into different ethnic groups. So and was Burma, he asks, an artificial creation of the former imperial leaders, and how could civil democratic government overcome such entrenched ethnic divisions?
Yeah. Let me preface my response by saying that I'm speaking not only as a scholar and activist, but as a Burmese, formerly stateless myself, as a refugee for 15 years in the US, traveling on refugee document. So I know from my experience the type of vulnerabilities that stateless people, far more downtrodden than I ever was, experience. At least, that's where I'm coming from. I think the most important thing on the statelessness is to understand the statelessness as something produced by the states, not by the people or community. We need to make a very clear distinction. Statelessness is a product of states, not the communities and people. Of course, the states may mobilize ethno-religious prejudices, or in some cases hatred, in order to advance its political calculations or ends. But fundamentally, statelessness is the problem that is created by the states. And in some ways, it's similar to our dear friend Johan Galton conceptualized poverty as structural violence. Actually, statelessness is the structural violence. And this is where the domestic societal tendencies, as well as illiberal regimes, and somewhat backward international conceptions of what people are or communities are. And let me just explain. In the specific case of the Burmese or Rohingya people, and in a lot of people question where they come from or who they are, who is Rohingya and who is not, who is Bengali, are they to be considered a nationality, or have they been stripped of the nationality standing that they got back in 1950s. So those questions aside, I think this is the area where larger universal principles of human rights and human dignity come into violent conflict with domestic national sovereignty conceptions and ideas. Because, if you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, it is very specifically stated that every person will have a right to a nationality. In other words, every person will be granted, just by the mere fact that he or she is a human being, a place of belongingness. And then statelessness it's basically about people without soil underneath their feet, as it were. Yeah? And then so I think, as a Burmese, when I read or hear news about the stateless Rohingya people, my immediate question is why are they treated not as human beings, but as hunted, fugitive, unwanted, undesired on our soil? Especially, I think it is very disturbing as a Burmese as well, with a profound Buddhist upbringing. We're a society that is supposed to thrive on and build ourselves on the principles of compassion. And why is it that we who have fought so hard and still yet to accomplish the institution of human rights in our country unable to extend that entitlement to this population. And then, and I think on the practical question of how do we move forward? Well, the way to move forward is not to multiply more nationalities. We already have 130 because it's convenient for the military regime to have so many, because all authoritarian regimes resort to the old divide and rule. And so we don't, in my personal opinion, I don't think we should support the clamor for granting Rohingyas a nationality. However, categorically, we should support initiatives that would ensure the dignified treatment of this population, citizenship, permanent residency. And finally, I think the Burmese society, the Burmese human rights community itself has to come to terms with the fact that there are illiberal tendencies within our own movement, our own society. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We must not deny that there are illiberal tendencies within our own society, not just the illiberal regime. And so I think a useful principle would be human security as a notion. We need to understand that security and well-being of individuals and communities are equally, if not more, important than the national security. I'll stop.
That's great. And I also, a wonderful answer too. And I also want to ask a follow-on question, which comes from Dr. Jonathan,
the military bit.
Bonitcha. To what extent have grassroots environmental movements, for example, the campaign against the Myitsone Dam, provided a way for communities to assert their rights against the government of Myanmar?
Well, I mean, a lot of you would know that Myitsone Dam was a $3 billion project that was instituted jointly by the Burmese regime and the Chinese electricity company. Along the lines that electricity should be traded across national boundaries. That this is all part of this free marketizing Asia. The formerly communist or leftist countries are now under pressure to open their borders for trading everything from drinking water to natural gas and electricity. And so this is the issue that had galvanized people like Dosu herself, as well as the grassroots communities across all sectors, including within the Burmese regime. And then so there are, this issue, the successful campaign to at least get the Myitsone Dam project suspended, indicates that the Burmese society there, despite its flaws, is capable of coming together for a common purpose. So that defeats the, that refutes categorically the military's claim that, people are so divided, ethnic divisions are so entrenched, therefore, only the military can keep this country with an iron fist in order for the country from balkanizing. Yeah? And over the past 50 years, my final comments is that the military has 50 years of opportunities to resolve, any type of ethnic conflicts. And, the civilian parliamentarians only had 1 decade to resolve the ethnic conflicts, and political conflicts. And the military has failed to make the best use of their 50 years in power. And in my personal view, because of their totalitarian or neo-totalitarian orientation, the military isn't after peace on equal terms. They are after peace on their own terms. So as I speak today, there's war going on in northern Kachin state between the Kachins, who had 14 years of peace deal with the military, and these wars are not simply motivated by ethno-nationalistic sentiments. There is a political economy of conflict there. If you look at the so-called minority areas, those are the areas that are very rich in resources and that are considered buffer states by the central state. And so I think this is a very, very important issue, and we must not buy into this concept that only the military can hold the country together.
Thank you very much. And now finally we come back to Dorsu, which everyone has been waiting for. Would you like to comment at all on any of these points?
Yes, the theme of this discussion today is rule of law, and I think it was very, very good that we started with Professor Lacey, because what you said about procedure